Mary Pat Treuthart, and I came to Gonzaga in 1989 and joined its faculty. And before that, I was a legal services staff attorney and program director in New Jersey. And I had a lawyer from practice faculty position at Duquesne Law School in Pittsburgh. I was attracted to Gonzaga because of its social justice mission, and I felt as though that was perfect given my interests and background, my professional work and my volunteer work. It's interesting because when I was in college, I was sort of trying to choose between social work and law, and my academic advisor suggested that I could do many things with a law degree, and maybe many more things with a law degree than might be possible with a social work degree. And so it was my intention when I went to law school, because I worked for legal services when I was in college. When I went to law school, I wanted to continue to work for legal services, and that was how my career began. As I began my academic career, I began to explore maybe some other options for putting more of an international spin on some of the work that I do, and a human rights spin in particular. And so I've had the opportunity to do volunteer work and teach in a number of different locales, again, across the globe. Initially, I taught a comparative women's rights course in Dublin under the auspices of the University of San Diego. And so in terms of teaching, that was one of my initial opportunities to meet women in Ireland who were doing some of the same work that I was doing, as well as introduce and include students in that sort of approach to looking at women's issues through an international lens. But my first sort of abroad experience in teaching students from outside the U.S. was in 2002, when I was a Fulbright Scholar and lecturer in Lublin, Poland. And I was teaching two different classes, a women's rights class and a U.S. human rights class. And I had a group of about 20 students in each of my classes. And it was a sort of different system, different approach, but they all worked really hard. And I had the opportunity to get to know people in the community who were working on human rights issues. There were a couple of other Fulbright professors at my university, and so I'm still in touch with some of them. And indeed, over the years, students from my class have reached out to me as well. I returned the following year to the same university to conduct a week-long intensive course on sexual harassment law in the U.S. and sort of how that worked. And so I had students and legal practitioners and judges from the community who participated in that course. And so I think Fulbright, when you have these opportunities, ideally they want you to maintain connections with the institutions or the people who you've met. And so that was one way that I was able to do that. In 2006, during my sabbatical, I took advantage of the opportunity to be a volunteer for the American Bar Association. And it was a program that is now referred to as the Rule of Law Initiative, the ROLI program. And so I took advantage of that opportunity to go and teach a course during part of fall semester in Kosovo. And so I taught a legal methodology course, co-taught that with another professor from the University of Pristina law faculty in Pristina, Kosovo. And so my students were among the group whose education was interrupted by the conflict in Serbia, Kosovo. And so they had a lot of them had been in refugee camps. They did not have the opportunity to have a continuous course of education through their middle school and high school experiences. And so they were very appreciative of the opportunity to go to university and also to take courses such as the one that I was offering. Then I also had the opportunity to, under the auspices of ABA Rowley again, to go to the Middle Eastern country of Qatar in 2012. And I spent the spring semester there teaching a domestic violence clinical course to students at Qatar University College of Law. And I had two classes, one because they have segregated education by sex. And so I had a class of 19 women. And then in another area of the building, I had a class of 6 men. And we talked about domestic violence, which there was no real heightened awareness about domestic violence or intimate partner violence in Qatar at the time. And so the students were learning about domestic violence, and then we had conducted a domestic violence awareness week. I have been involved with a group that is based in the west side of Washington called the Center for Women and Democracy. And as a member of that particular group, and I served on its board previously, I had the opportunity to go on delegations of women to places across the world to meet other women and have meetings with them and discussions with them about women's rights issues. So under the auspices of the Center for Women and Democracy, I visited Vietnam, I visited Rwanda, I visited Iceland, and then more recently we visited Israel and Palestine. On 2 occasions, students from the law school were able to secure some grant funding through the organization to go on these delegations as well. So, I think that sometimes from a student perspective, they're not always familiar with the opportunities that might exist, but each of the organizations that I mentioned in terms of the ABA Rowley program, as well as the Center for Women and Democracy, Bridges Across Borders, Southeast Asia Continuing Legal Education Initiative, they all have some student programs as well. So I think that there are opportunities for not only me, but some of my other colleagues to connect students with the opportunity to do some work as externs, et cetera, while they're in law school.